I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman, and you've heard a lot of stories of the history of Louisiana State Penitentiary on this show. But the one I'm about to tell you today, I really came across on accident. I was doing some research on historic escapes, and I came across one in particular, and this may be one of the wildest escapes, definitely one of the most tragic in Louisiana State Penitentiary history that did not have to do with Charlie Frazier. And so today I'm going to tell you about an inmate by the name of Wilford Lindsly. And I'm going to start off by telling you what landed Wilford into bloody Angola, and then what led up to what you're going to hear about within the meat of this story. So we're going to go back to 1932, July 11th, actually. And I'm going to reference an article from Shreveport, Louisiana. It's the Times newspaper from that day, and it reads, headline, jealous man slays rival in gunfight. And y'all know how these old articles read. You just can't beat them. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, July 11th. A charge of murder was filed late today against Wilford Lindsly, a 24-year-old grocery clerk, in connection with the fatal shooting of Stanley Couvion, who was 21. Late Sunday night in an altercation said to have grown out of jealousy, get this, over a 16-year-old girl. Gilmore Couvion, cousin of the slain youth, was wounded in the shooting fray, but is reported recovering in the hospital. The charge against Lindsly, who disappeared after the shooting following questions of witnesses by District Attorney John Fred Odom, his assistant Fred S. LeBlanc, and police. Help of authorities over a widespread area was enlisted in an attempt to locate Lindsly, described as a disappointed suitor who shot Stanley Couvion in the heart when he found him in an automobile with Miss Alveda Piazza in a business district filling station, and then wounded Gilmore Couvion, station employee and the cousin of the girl's escort, in the thigh. So they eventually catch Lindsly, and he goes to trial, and he ends up taking a plea in which he pleads guilty. He gets a life sentence inside of bloody Angola in what newspapers were terming as a jealousy slaying. Now, at this time, it was February 1st of 1933 when he got that sentence handed down of life, and it's off to Angola for this young man, and apparently he didn't like prison too much. And it wasn't much longer after that when in late May of 1936, absolute tragedy happens. And I'm going to reference another article. This is from the St. Francisville Democrat. It was published on May 30th of 1936. And it's important to note that a lot of these papers, they weren't daily papers. They were weekly papers or every 3 days or whatever. So this isn't necessarily the date when this went down, but it was a date when it was printed in that particular paper. And at this point in time, Lindsly had been in prison for roughly 4 years. So it reads like this: bloody tragedy on Angola. Captain and Miss Nelson Heimel were killed by a trustee prisoner at their home, Camp G, Angola State Farm, late Wednesday afternoon. As of this writing, Wilford Lindsly, 25 years old, white convict, is being sought as the slayer. There were no eyewitnesses to the tragedy, but it is thought from the circumstantial evidence that Miss Heimel was stabbed to death and that Captain Heimel was shot to death. Perhaps an hour or two later, Miss Heimel was killed. The double crime was not discovered until 2 shots were heard, these being responsible for the death of Captain Heimel. And y'all, it's spelled H-I-M-E-L, but it could be email, which is a Cajun last name here, but that's typically spelled H-Y-M-E-L. So we're going to go with Heimel. Felicide Guidry, trustee cook at the Heimel residence, heard the shooting and came out to investigate. As he did so, Alfred held a gun on him and forced him to go with him to the camp. The two got into Captain Heimel's automobile and drove 7 miles across the huge penitentiary farm, going out the back gate, which leads into Wilkinson County, Mississippi. The automobile became bogged in mud and was abandoned. The convicts became separated, and Guidry made his way back to the camp and furnished the only clue to the trail of the fugitive. Sheriff Wilcox was at Baton Rouge when news of the tragedy reached town, but he had left immediately for Angola. In the meantime, Deputy Sheriff C.E. Daniels summoned a posse and went... And y'all, yes, this is that time frame in the 30s. They got a posse together because they went to Angola to lead assistance in the manhunt. Penitentiary officials were already on the trail and were soon reinforced by 12 members of the State Bureau of Criminal Identification. The trail is being followed closely, and it seems that it can only be a matter of hours until the fugitive is either captured or killed. Parish coroner was on the scene early and immediately held an inquest. This revealed that Captain Heimel had been shot twice, once in the head and once in the body, and that Miss Heimel had been killed by stabbing. It was the belief that Miss Heimel was first stabbed and that Captain Heimel was then shot. Miss Heimel's body was found in the bathtub in the bathroom where the doors had been locked from the outside. Captain Heimel was shot with his own rifle. Alfred Lindsly is about 25 years old and was sent up from East Baton Rouge Parish for murder about 4 years ago, receiving a life sentence. This is the first trouble of this nature to occur on Angola in several months. And I guess that's a flex for him. And it does not seem to have been a part of an attempted escape, which is at the bottom of most trouble of this nature on the prison farm. Several men have been killed on Angola in recent years when they tried to prevent escapes. However, Miss Heimel was the first woman to be killed on Angola in about 20 years. Miss Elkert, who is wife of the prison's physician, was killed by a trustee house servant about 20 years ago. And that's interesting. I may do a story on that at some point. Captain and Miss Heimel were held in the highest esteem by people of West Feliciana Parish and the personnel at Angola. Captain Heimel had been long in the penitentiary service, first being attached to Hope Farm near Jeanerette. When this plantation was abandoned, he was transferred to Angola. He was out of the service for a while under the Long administration, and they're talking about Huey Long, but it was found his service was invaluable and he was reinstated, being assigned to one of the hardest prisons on the farm. Captain and Miss Heimel rendered faithful and efficient service to the state and at the same time preserved independence of thought and action. William Wade, 17-year-old son of Miss E.B. Wade, was shot and instantly killed by trustee guards Thursday afternoon. Miss Wade sent her son to get something at a nearby store, telling him to hurry, and he ran. It is sad that the guards called upon him to halt. When he failed to do so, they shot him down. An accidental discharge of a gun by a member of the Posse caused the wounding of 2 men. Just how seriously, we have been unable to learn. A veteran dog sergeant of the penitentiary and a foreman at Camp A were also shot. Friday morning, as the Democrat goes to press, the hunt for the fugitive is still on. The parish is being searched thoroughly. There are officers from different sections of the state, and many volunteers have joined in the hunt. So at this point in time, people have been shot and killed because, look, everybody's on fire. This guy has escaped prison And how about what I just told you? 17-year-old kid walking across the field. He starts running because his mom said, hurry up. And they shoot him, I guess, assuming he is the escaped convict. And other shootings related to that guy's escape. So he's caused quite the bullshit in bloody Angola at this point. So they're on the case, and another article comes out and it says huge posse pushes hunt for fugitive. More than 100 men and 15 bloodhounds tracking Angola escape. And I'm referencing this from the Times in Shreveport as well. More than 100 armed men afoot and on horseback and 15 bloodhounds with attendants today search for the underbrush of a densely wooded strip south of the state prison for Wilford Lindsly, 23 years old. And if you notice, every article, he's a different age. Back in those days, people had really no freaking clue how old you were. You just told them, and they went by that, and nobody kept a good record of it. But I'll continue on. 23-year-old escape lifer whose career has resulted in the slaying now of 4 persons and the wounding of 3 others. The dead, Stanley Couvion, killed in Baton Rouge by Lindsly during a quarrel over a girl. That case, which sent Lindsly to the state prison for life. Then it goes on, Captain Nelson Heimel and his wife of the penitentiary staff slain in their home on the prison grounds Wednesday by Lindsly before his escape for freedom. William Wade, a 17-year-old deaf farm youth, shot and killed by mistake yesterday by 2 prison guards, Jake Hoover and Willie Green, who mistook him for the fugitive convict in the hunt. Those injured, G.S. Couvion, who is the cousin of Stanley Couvion, who was shot, and it cuts off right there, unfortunately. But that gives you an idea of all these guys and one gal already in the bloodshed involved by the escape of this guy. I'm going to read you another article that came out, and this tells you how crazy the news was back in these days. Suspect is held as Louisiana fugitive. The State Bureau of Identification said that a man is held in Texarkana, Texas, but was not Wilford Lindsly. The Bureau said the prisoner's height was given as 6'2", while Lindsly was only 5'6". I would say that's a big difference there.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. A man police believed might possibly be Wilford Lindsly, who escaped Wednesday from the Angola prison farm after killing a prison captain and his wife, was arrested. And they're referencing just prior to finding out he wasn't the right guy in this particular section. Officers said he was otherwise uncommunicative. He was arrested while prowling through a residential section of the city and was taken to headquarters while officers communicated with the Baton Rouge and Angola authorities. The arrest was made near the northwest Louisiana line while a South Louisiana posse continued a wide hunt for Lindsly, 23, a life-timer who escaped from Angola Wednesday night after killing a captain and his wife. Peace officers led by bloodhounds were closing in on a wooded area about 12 miles east of here, where this paper was printed, today in the belief that Wilford Lindsly, 23-year-old convict who escaped the prison farm Wednesday night after killing 2, was hiding in a heavy underbrush in the vicinity. The hunt centered on a district approximately 3 square miles in the vicinity of a store in St. Francisville. All but about 60 men in the huge posse that sought the fugitive yesterday were called back to the prison headquarters last night. The morning, 14 fresh bloodhounds, followed by guards on horseback and afoot, took up the trail again. During the night, the guards searched trains passing through the area and continued to stop automobiles on the highway. Then, physicians reported that the condition of a guard who was critically shot, Tom Flewitt, was accidentally shot during the hunt yesterday, and he was critical. but showed a slight improvement during the night. Charles McCrory, another guard, wounded when one of the Manhunt party fired into the underbrush at what he thought was an escaped desperado, was reportedly to be resting comfortably. I mean, they're shooting at everybody. This is wild. And why is this? Because a lot of these Posse members back in those days, they weren't police officers. They had no training. They hunted, probably, but they had no training in anything. They were just out there, and if something moved, they were shooting and killing it. A third unfortunate victim of the hunt, Willie Wade, 17, who was shot and killed by Jack Hoover and Willie Green, convict trustee guards at the penitentiary, when he refused to halt at their command. He will be buried this afternoon. Prison officials reported that Hoover and Green had been brought back to the penitentiary and removed from duty. I would imagine so. But the opinion prevailed that the shooting was definitely an accident. Wild shit right there. These guys shot and killed an innocent 17-year-old kid, and they're saying, it was an accident. They shouldn't be punished for that. A coroner's jury reported he died from gunshot wounds inflicted by Jack Hoover and Willie Green, convict trustee guards. And that's the other aspect of this. These weren't correctional officers like you have today. These were convict guards. And I've told you about this before. When Woody was hosting this show, he told you about it as well. These were convict trustee guards. Could you imagine these days giving a convict a shotgun and saying, here, you're in charge of all the other convicts. Make sure they don't escape. Just wild stuff back in the really bloody years of bloody Angola. But I'll continue on. It says his weeping mother said she did not blame those poor convict boys because they were doing what they thought was right. Officials said the only motive they could discover which led Lindsly to kill the captain and Miss Heimel, for whom he served as a yard boy, was because of his desire to escape. They said Miss Heimel had not been assaulted. Lindsly was serving a life sentence for the killing in Baton Rouge of Stanley Couvion in an argument over a date with a young girl. Yeah, a 16-year-old girl, mind you. He was 20 plus at the time. Two guards who killed the farm boy, they testified at the coroner's inquest into his death. Green, a Negro guard, said he was on a cliff back of a brush pile when he saw the youth wearing clothing like that of the fleeing convict coming down the road. Quote, I couldn't tell if he was the man we were hunting, and I hollered, halt to him, Green testified. Quote, he started to run and reached to his back pocket, and as he did, I shot him. So there you have that. Man, you cannot make this up, and this is the true history of not only Angola prison, but this occurred pretty much nationwide at other prisons as well. And speaking of trustee guards, at Angola, there was actually, somehow I came across this article from July 1st of 1936, where they interviewed a trustee guard, and he seemed to have wrote his own. It was almost like an opinion article in this paper. This was the Times Shreveport, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, Angola, Louisiana, when the free guards put me out of the truck, and he's writing this from his point of view, at post number 2 on the St. Francisville Angola Highway Wednesday night, I took up my station in the woods a short distance from the highway. And again, this is a trustee lifer at Angola. They give him a shotgun. They say, help us hunt this guy that escaped prison. And they drop him off right outside the gates looking for this cat, right? Blows my mind. So he goes on. He says, no sooner had I posted myself than Lindsly jumped me. He got the drop on me and he made me drop my gun. He ordered me to step out and keep my mouth shut. Lindsly picked up my gun and we crossed the highway to the south side where he made me exchange clothes with him. He then unloaded my gun and took the other ammunition I had and gave the gun back to me. We spent the rest of the night in the woods, never getting very far from the highway. I caught a nap during the middle of the night, but Lindsly never closed his eyes. Thursday, we stayed in the woods, camping in the hills, but always keeping close to the underbrush. Lindsly told me that he planned to capture a car on the highway and break through the guard lines. He said he would let me go when we got through the lines. All Thursday night and Friday, we stayed along the bayou, occasionally working toward the highway to watch for cars, but opportunity never presented itself for Lindsly to take one. Yesterday afternoon, Lindsly spotted the oil derrick where a car was parked. He told me he was going to get that car. We watched the derrick all that afternoon and hid within 500 feet of it Saturday night. Just after daylight, we moved up to the derrick and Lindsly told me to get out of the opening and see if there were any guards there. As I stepped into the opening, I saw Drew Fields, a convict guard. He recognized me and didn't shoot. He told me to drop my gun and asked me what I was doing there. I told him I had been kidnapped by Lindsly. Fields then came to the door of the tool house after laying his gun down inside, and I motioned him that Lindsly was in the brush behind me. As Fields stepped back for his gun, Lindsly raised up and fired. The bullet went through the galvanized iron wall of the tool house, striking an oil watchman inside. After that time, Fields yelled that the tool house is bulletproof, and I knew he was trying to keep Lindsly from shooting anymore. When Lindsly fired, I jumped behind an automobile out of range of Lindsly's gun. Lindsly eased back into the woods and made for the ravine. I ran to a nearby Negro's house, and I got an old Negro to go out to the highway with me. I was afraid to go on the road by myself because I had on Lindsly's clothes and was about his build and thought someone may shoot me. Probably a good guess. We flagged some highway cops. They took us to Percy's store where we got some more men and the hounds and went back to the tool house. A few minutes later, Lindsly was dead. We ate blackberries and dewberries and drank from the bayou. Mosquitoes nearly ran us crazy and kept me from getting much sleep and probably kept Lindsly awake the whole time. It was an awful experience, and I guess I'm lucky to be here today. So I just told you at this point, Lindsly was dead, right? How did he die? What happened? And this article is dated June 1st of 1936 from the Times in Shreveport. It says, headline, Angola escapee kills himself, cheats posse as he chooses suicide death. Wilford Lindsly's life comes to an end of bloody trail and desperate gun battle early Sunday morning, had taken trustee guard as hostage. 23-year-old triple slayer Wilford Lindsly plunged a bullet through his own heart early today after a terrific gun battle, and that is exactly how they describe it, with posse men who had trapped him in a ravine 12 miles east of the Louisiana State Penitentiary farms. As a dozen heavily armed posse men closed in with their guns blazing, a steady fire, the 135-pound convict desperado, he was a big boy, 135 pounds and 5'6", right? Took a final shot at an officer 10 feet away and shouted, "I'm shot, I'm dying." He pressed the muzzle of his revolver against his breast and pulled the trigger. When officers reached him, his shirt was afire. He died instantly with his pistol gripped tightly in his right hand and a high-powered rifle which jammed at his feet. A few minutes earlier, James Hamilton, a trustee guard who Lindsly had abducted and kept with him since shortly after he fled from the prison Wednesday night, notified posse men of the murderer's whereabouts. Lindsly died in a desperate attempt to make his way through the corridor of posse men thrown about the wooded area along St. Francisville Angola Highway after he was reportedly seen in the vicinity of a store Thursday morning. Hamilton escaped from Lindsly as the latter engaged another trustee convict guard and an oil well watchman in a guard fight in an effort to take the watchman's automobile. The watchman, J.A. Walker, was shot through the leg and rushed to a Baton Rouge hospital. The wounding of Walker added to the list of casualties in the, and again, the verbiage of these, exciting three-day hunt for Lindsly. Since Wednesday afternoon, when some unexplained motives prompted Lindsly to stab Miss Heimel to death in the bathtub of her camp home, then send 2 bullets through her husband 3 hours later, a bloody trail has marked the search. Willie Wade, an 18-year-old farm boy, so he was 17, now he was 18, was killed Thursday when 2 trustee guards mistook him for Lindsly. Tom J. Blewett, a prison camp foreman, died from wounds inflicted by a fellow guard while closing in on a wooded patch where Lindsly was believed to be hiding. Another guard, Charlie McCrory, fell from the same burst of fire that killed Blewett. but will recover. Walker will also recover. Hamilton was abducted by Lindsly as he took up a guard post on the Percy store area late Wednesday night. He said the killer jumped him as he entered the woods north of the St. Francisville Highway, took his gun and ammo, and forced him to exchange clothing. When Lindsly fled the prison, he was clad in a blue shirt and striped blue and white trustee trousers. Hamilton was dressed in tan trousers and a shirt worn by trustee guards. He said Lindsly unloaded his shotgun and returned it to him and made him walk in the front at all times. They crossed to the south side of the highway to make their way up Little Bayou Sarah, keeping close to the dense underbrush in the daytime and frequently wading in the shallow waters of the bayou to throw off bloodhounds. Hamilton said he was permitted to catch short naps during the night, but that Lindsly didn't close his eyes. They ate blackberries and drank from the bayou. Occasionally, Hamilton said they would work their way toward the highway in hopes of capturing an automobile, but the opportunity never presented itself. Before daylight today, Lindsly told Hamilton he couldn't stand it any longer and was going to make a break through the lines. Yesterday afternoon, Hamilton said Lindsly spotted an oil derrick and a tool house where the watchman's car was parked. He said he was going to get the car. Quote, when we approached the oil derrick shortly after daybreak and Lindsly made me go out into the opening to see if there were any guards stationed there, I saw Drew Fields, and I read you all that part. Now, it goes on to say, when Lindsly shot at Fields, I jumped from behind the car and Fields had hollered out of that tool house that it was bulletproof, and I guess Lindsly believed him and he eased up that bayou. As he did so, I slipped off toward a nearby Negro house and got the Negro to go to the highway with me in this way it's written in those days, y'all. I was afraid to go to the road by myself because I was afraid I'd get shot. Hamilton bears a slight resemblance to Lindsly. He's about the same height and slender build and had on Lindsly's clothing. When they reached the highway, they flagged down 3 patrolmen and they took these guys to a store where, quote, we got more men and the hounds and went back to the tool house. The Posse men were in charge of Sheriff-elect Teddy Martin of West Feliciana Parish. They immediately formed a circle around the area and closed in. Martin was on the opposite bank of Little Bayou Sarah, he said, when he saw a group of guards on the other side on the top of a bluff firing at Lindsly. I waded across a creek, he said, firing as I went. And Lewis Hurd, a state policeman, also started shooting and came around by a piece of sand. I mean, everybody should start shooting. And fired at Lindsly also. We advanced step by step, and he shot at me a total of 16 times. Finally, he shouted, I'm shot. I'm lying. But we thought he was playing possum, so we approached him very carefully. When we got up to him, however, we saw that he was dead and that his shirt was on fire. Martin said that Lindsly had been firing with a rifle that he took from Captain Heimel, but at the end, he was using the captain's pistol and that it was apparent that he shot himself with that pistol. Quote, Lindsly fired point blank at Hurd and myself just before he turned the pistol on himself. I guess we were pretty lucky. During the exchange of fire, one of Lindsly's shots knocked a gun from the hands of a prison dog sergeant. It was estimated the murderer fired a score of times, but none of his shots found their mark. 3 unfired cartridges were found in Lindsly's rifle, and 6 undischarged bullets were in the magazine of his revolver. The coroner immediately summoned a jury and conducted an inquest, and the jury found, quote, we, the jury, impaneled and sworn to determine that the cause of death of Wilford Lindsly, find that he died of gunshot wounds, the bullet having entered the body 2 inches below the collarbone and passing through the left lung, making an exit in the left lower lumbar. We hereby agree that Lindsly died of a self-inflicted wound. Immediately after the inquest, Lindsly's body was removed to a prison hospital at Angola. An hour later, it was claimed by his father and taken to Baton Rouge for burial. Lindsly's death brought to an end one of the most intensive hunts in the history of Louisiana Penitentiary. During the 3 days, nearly 300 men engaged in the search. The posse was composed of agents of the State Bureau of Identification, State Highway Police, paid prison guards, and trustee convict guards. Warden Jones, General Lewis P. Guire, Superintendent of State Police, directed the search activities. Lindsly was committed to the penitentiary 3 years ago from Baton Rouge under life sentence after pleading guilty to the murder in connection with the shooting of Stanley Couvillon, 22, after what witnesses said was an argument over whether he or Couvillon was going to take home a young girl with whom Couvillon was seated in an automobile parked at a filling station. He entered the penitentiary in February of 1933. A month later, he was made a trustee guard. So that's crazy. This guy just got into Angola a month prior for murder, a life sentence, and he's made a trustee guard. Here's your shotgun, right? That's crazy. 18 months ago, he was assigned to Captain Heimel's house as a houseboy. His record at the penitentiary was spotless, and prison authorities were unable to assign any reason for the slaying of the captain and his wife. Lindsly made his escape from Camp G of the penal farm at dusk Wednesday night after forcing Felicia Guillory, a fellow convict, to accompany him in Captain Heimel's car. Guillory was released a few minutes later, and Lindsly then abandoned the automobile at the foot of the Tunica Hills, where the car was bogged down in a muddy ditch. Recounting his activities from that point on, Warden Jones said today he believed Lindsly had circled the north side of the penal farm, cutting back to the St. Francisville Highway on the east side of the farm, where he abducted Hamilton. So there you have it, the full story of the escape of Alfred Lindsly. And I got to say, all the research I've done over the years on Bloody Angola, I never heard of this. So as I told you, I'm working on an episode that is highlighting some of the most prolific escapes at Angola that you've never heard about. A lot of these, there's not this much information because not that much happened, but there's a lot of escapes where they get out and they don't get far from Bloody Angola before they get caught. So you can cover several in one episode. That's what I was originally researching when I came across this. And I'm like, oh man, this is start to finish right here. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening. Check us out on Patreon, commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, and more. Patreon.com/Bloody Angola Podcast. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman for Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Angola